Good morning, small baby humans. Hi.
Hey, how's it going? It is Thursday, March 18th, and this is In Case You Missed American History. If you're watching this, that means you can come to class today, and that's okay. I hope you're doing really, really well, and I hope those around you guys are doing well. And we're getting closer to the weekend bit by bit, but we're also getting closer to the end of the quarter. So a couple quick reminders before we get going through some things, and that is that next Friday, which is March 26th, is going to be the end of the third, semester quarter, and the end of our time together in American history. So make sure you're checking Infinite Campus for your grades. And also, if you owe me any late work, you have until next Friday at midnight to get that in. That is going to include the civil rights movement projects that some of you guys haven't turned in yet. If you are watching this and you've got everything turned in, good for you. Just keep working hard on things to make sure that they get done. Our assignment for this week, the Cold War, is due on Monday by midnight. Monday is going to be the last asynchronous day of the quarter, so use it well. And obviously, as always, if you have any questions, please feel free to let me know. I'm more than happy to help out in any way that I can. Okay, so today what we're going to do is we're going to do 2 more slides on the Cold War. We're going to talk about, I think, one of the more confusing messes of the Cold War, and then kind of a side argument in the Cold War, I guess is what I would call it. So we're going to look at Germany and the space race. And so Germany is complicated during the Cold War because obviously after World War II, Germany catches almost all of the blame for what happens, and the Holocaust makes things even worse. And so, as seems to happen to a lot of these countries that were in conflict in World War II, it gets split up. And actually, Germany gets split into different zones. As you can see on the map to the right, Germany gets split into a number of different things. But basically, if I were going to put it in the most simple way that I could, Germany gets broke into East Germany, which sides with the Soviet Union, communism, the communist bloc, or the Eastern Bloc as they call it, and West Germany, which sides with us and the more democratic countries. So again, we've got the Warsaw Pact side, East Germany. We've got the NATO side, West Germany. And each side is very loyal to their respective ideology. Let's go with that. I almost said about 3 different other words that ran through my head that maybe in the end didn't seem quite as appropriate. Okay. Probably a little confusing, but I mean, okay, so they split the country and this side's communist and this side's this, countries do that, blah, blah, blah. But the big mess in the whole thing happens right in here, in Berlin. Berlin, the capital city, gets broken up into zones too. Now, if you notice, Berlin is in the middle of East Germany, and therefore we have a little bit of a problem. We have a democratic piece of a city sitting in the middle of a communist country. Wrap your head around that one for a second. If you have any questions, so do I. Who thought this was a good idea? I don't know. Okay. And so the communists did the best they could to block off West Germany from being able to be successful. People in the beginning could freely come and go between the 2 parts of Berlin. And so sometimes when people got fed up with communism, they went to West Berlin and they hiked her out of there. Okay, they got out of there somehow. Obviously, the communists didn't like that they had this icon of freedom sitting in the middle of their country. So at some points they caused various problems in that part of things. Berlin actually needed to be airdropped supplies in the late 1940s because the communist bloc was choking off trade to the western part of the city. On several occasions, different American presidents called for better treatment of West Berlin. Some called for unification. They asked for more freedom of travel, more freedom of information, more freedom of movement. Probably none were as critical as JFK. If you don't know, that's John F. Kennedy Jr. And partially because of the free movement and because of the fact that people were defecting to the West more and more often in 1961, the Berlin Wall began to be constructed. And in areas, it was simply a fenced-in area with armed guards. In some areas, it's actually a block wall. Regardless, free travel became harder. It became harder for people to come and go. People couldn't defect as easily. People were split off from family. Again, American presidents like Kennedy were critical and asked for the wall to be taken down. And famously, in a speech, he said, "Ich bin ein Berliner," which there's some argument over whether he said, we are all Berliners, or I am a Berliner, or if he said I am a jelly donut. I don't know what the word for jelly donut is, but it's one of those history things that I don't always understand. The Berlin Wall was a symbol of oppression, and it stood for, roughly 30, almost 30 some years, 20, roughly 30 years. And it was it opened up in 1989 for the sides to freely travel back and forth, and it was finally demolished in 1992. You may see video of people with sledgehammers busting up the wall, and people actually, chunks of the wall. Eventually, obviously, Germany stopped being East Germany and West Germany once the communist part of Germany fell apart and just became a unified Germany again, which it still is today. And very much more of an ally of ours in the world today. Now, this blocking or fencing of people in was very common. Actually, I went to 8th grade with a kid whose family escaped from Hungary in a hot air balloon. It was Zoltan. He was a good dude. He played chess, didn't speak much English, but he was a good chess player. And it was very hard for people who didn't want to be in those countries to either stay safe or escape. And so they would pay great deals of money or do some pretty death-defying stuff to get themselves out of the place. Okay, our last slide for the day is on the space race. Okay, this is going to seem like a science competition, but we became really competitive with the Soviets in everything. I don't really think that we were trying to launch nukes from the moon. I don't really think anybody was going to use it as a space military base. I think the space race is more about whose science is better, who can accomplish things the fastest. We were competitive in everything. Sure, nuclear warheads, yes, taking over the world, domino theories, North Korea, South Korea, North Vietnam, South Vietnam, the Olympics. Okay, the Olympics were crazy competitive. Okay, we even boycotted them when they were in each other's countries. But the space race kind of became symbolic of this competition between the two countries, the ultimate goal being to successfully land a man on the moon. So we had to go from, we don't have a rocket that can work, to Neil Armstrong. Okay. It was costly for both sides. There were a number of test launches that didn't go very well. In the early stages, the Soviets were, I think they were better at it than we were, to be totally honest. We were really good at crashing rockets and causing cool explosions, whereas the Soviets seemed to advance faster than us. The very, very first man-made thing that was shot into space was a satellite called Sputnik. In 1957. Now, Sputnik is a ball about the size of a volleyball. I mean, girls' basketball. It's got these metal, leg wire antenna things, and it had a little beeping light on it, a little beep, 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 red light. And they shot it up, and it orbited the Earth, and it was so low in orbit that people claimed, again, I wasn't alive, and I'm not a boomer, all right? People claimed that they could see it. People would go up on clear nights and sit on their roofs and try to see Sputnik. People in the United States were terrified. They thought that this was the beginning of the end. They thought that the Soviets were going to put some kind of weapon into space, and that Sputnik was the beginning stages of that, when in reality it was just a beeping basketball that was collecting some data, I guess. The next step was getting something live into space and bringing it back alive. Well, again, the Soviets beat us to that when they sent a dog named Laika into space. Laika, went up into space, whoop, and then came back down. And not to be outdone, we decided to shoot something more human-like into space, and we got a little bit better at getting things to go off the ground. And so we sent a small chimpanzee named Ham into space. Ham was cute. He became a national hero. Here, I'll do this quick. Let's see. Ham the Space Chimp. Let's see. Let's get some pictures of Ham the Space Chimp. All right. Come on. Oh, look how cute he is. Look, he's so cute. Ham the Space Chimp. Oh. Yeah, enough of that. Okay, so we shot a chimpanzee, which is obviously more human-like, and we can learn a lot from. All right, but once again, the Soviets beat us to the next round, which was to shoot a human into space. They shot a cosmonaut. Ours are astronauts. Theirs are cosmonauts. An astronaut named Yuri Gagarin into space. Gagarin literally went boop, and then boop, back down. Not too long after that, this is where we get the movie Hidden Figures with Katherine Johnson. If you haven't seen it, Hidden Figures, very, very good. We shot a person in space named John Glenn. John Glenn came back. John Glenn, I believe, was also the oldest man ever shot into space. Not at this time, but later on in his life, he goes back up into space. I want to say he's like in his 80s when he does it. Well, from there, it becomes a competition to see who can land something on the moon. And we start the Apollo missions to land a man on the moon. And then 1969, and I firmly believe 99.99999 repeating, of course, percent that we did land on the moon. In 1969, we were able to touch down an Apollo mission onto the moon. There's the moon lander and one of the astronauts and the American flag and the little rover. They hit some golf balls, if I remember correctly. And Neil Armstrong said, small step for man, one giant leap for mankind. America went nuts. It was all on the TV. Here's the crazy part about this. They shot these dudes into space and landed them and brought them back, all with less computing power than you have in your phone. Okay. Now it's not that after this, the moon didn't become cool. Like we still went back a few times. There was the Apollo 13 mission that didn't go well, that people almost died and got lost in space. Houston, we have a problem. But I think it became something that's like, oh, we've done that. Now, obviously, various countries and private companies like SpaceX are really into the idea of landing people on Mars. So we'll see. But in this case, we beat them to it. It was a big moment, not just for the United States, but for humanity, period. And obviously, a huge win for us. Now, tomorrow we're going to wrap up the Cold War. We're going to talk about the Vietnam War, and we're going to talk about kind of the beginning of the end of the Cold War and the end of the Cold War. Please use the rest of the time you have today planned for American history to work on the Cold War or some late work that you might owe me. If you have any questions, please ask. Have a great day. See you soon.